Her head is on a pillow, her eyes are closed, and she looks as if she is sleeping peacefully. People are gathered around her, their faces a mix of confusion and pity. You might think she's gone mad. You might think she's a beggar. You might even laugh at the absurdity of it all. But I promise you, you would be wrong. The reason she is here is tied to a man you know well from this channel, the man who slept in the mud in front of his house for 6 months. If you haven't seen that story, you need to watch it right now. The link is in the description. This is a story about how old wounds can open again, how pride can destroy a good thing, and how a moment of anger can lead to public shame. Before we begin, I want you to make a promise to yourself. Promise that you will not judge the characters, but you will listen to their pain. Smash the like button and subscribe, because this is a story that will shake you to its core. The rebuilding and the fragile peace. After their long, agonizing ordeal, Apata and his wife had finally found their peace. It wasn't a peace that came easily, but one hard one, built on the ashes of their shattered marriage and cemented with a quiet, mutual understanding. For Apata, the memory of those 6 months in the mud was a constant, humbling reminder of how low he had fallen. For his wife, the public shame she endured was a scar on her soul that she could never forget. But they had faced their demons, and together, they chose to move forward. The home that was once a battlefield of silent rage and biting words was now filled with the warmth of love and the laughter of their children. The air, once heavy with tension, was now light and breathable. Apata, with a newfound clarity and a deep sense of responsibility, dedicated himself entirely to his family. He completely stopped drinking. The beer parlor, once his sanctuary, became a place he actively avoided, walking a wide circle around it on his way home from work. He had found a new, more profound sanctuary in the company of his children and the quiet support of his wife. He found a good job at a reputable company. It was the kind of job he had always dreamed of, stable, well-paying, and filled with a sense of purpose. Every morning, he'd put on his crisp, white shirt and tie, and his wife would pack his lunch with care. He worked hard, leaving early and coming home late, his body weary but his spirit renewed. Every naira he earned felt like a small act of redemption. He bought his wife a new wrapper, and he replaced the children's worn-out school sandals. He provided well for his family, and they were happy. The past was a memory, a terrible lesson learned. The family was a testament to the power of love and forgiveness. Their love, once shattered, was carefully rebuilt, stronger than before. They would sit together in the evenings on their worn wooden bench, watching their children play, a peace settling over them that felt like a quiet blessing. She would make his favorite meals, pounded yam with egusi soup, and he would help the children with their homework, his face alight with a joy he thought he had lost forever. The children, who had once known the fear of a father in the mud and a mother's silent fury, now knew only the joy of a whole family. They would climb onto his lap, their small hands tracing the lines on his face. Their small, perfect world felt real and solid. This was their life. A quiet, peaceful existence that, to an outsider, looked perfect. But beneath the surface, a subtle, unspoken fear lingered. It was a fear that the happiness they had built was fragile. They were living in a beautiful house of cards, and they both knew what a single breath of wind could do. The fear was a silent guest, sitting at their table, listening to their laughter. It was the fear that a misstep, a wrong word, or an unexpected change could send them spiraling back into the darkness. What do you think is a bigger threat to a family's happiness, a clear, visible crisis, or the silent, creeping fear that something bad is coming? Let me know what you think in the comments, and tell us where you are watching from. Beneath the surface, a fragile fear lingered. That fear became a reality when Apata came home with the crushing news: he had been laid off from his job. The foundation of their peaceful life was suddenly crumbling. The new conflict and the battle against despair. Apata's wife, a woman who had seen the depths of despair, reacted with a surprising composure. She was not angry, not at first. Instead, a grim determination settled over her face, a look he knew well. They had survived Apata's public humiliation, they would survive this. They made a plan. He would wake up early, dress in his best clothes, and pound the pavement, leaving his resume at every business and shop. She would take on extra work, selling more of her wares at the market, stretching every coin until it screamed. They would meet the day head-on, together. For weeks, their resolve held. Each morning, she would hand him a freshly ironed shirt, and he would leave the house with a look of purpose. But the economy was a harsh, unyielding beast. Every door he knocked on was either closed or open just enough for a polite rejection. The initial optimism slowly bled into a quiet desperation. He would return home each evening, not with the triumphant news they hoped for, but with a defeated look in his eyes. The creases in his shirt became more pronounced, a perfect reflection of the lines of worry on his forehead. He stopped dressing up and began to take on any small, menial task he could find. A day of labor here, carrying sacks of grain at the mill for a meager sum. A small errand there, running messages for a local shopkeeper. He would return home, his body aching and covered in the dust of his failure. The money was not enough. The small, careful budget they had created was torn to shreds by the reality of their empty pockets. The children's school fees were due, and the schoolmaster had sent a stern-looking note. Their supply of rice and beans was dwindling, and the children's laughter seemed to grow quieter, replaced by the persistent, hollow sound of hunger. Slowly, the quiet home they had built began to fill with the sounds of their anxiety. The small arguments started again, not over alcohol this time, but over money. Over their empty pockets and their children's unmet needs. The wife, who had endured so much, began to lose her patience. She saw his quiet despair not as pain, but as an echo of his past weakness. She saw the man who had once chosen the mud over his bed now giving up, choosing a path of retreat and defeat. Her voice, which had once been filled with love, now carried a sharp, cutting edge. She would point out what they didn't have, what was missing from the house, the children's needs that were not met. The school fees, Apata. What will they eat? Do you not see, she would say, her voice rising in frustration. You sit here in silence as if the problem will solve itself. The more she complained, the more his shame grew. He felt like a failure. He had worked so hard, and yet, here he was again, unable to provide. The weight of his inability was a physical burden on his shoulders. He felt the cold touch of the mud from so long ago creeping up his spine. He was losing his footing again, and he was terrified. He was the man who had laid in the mud, and he felt as though he was on the verge of returning there. The words that broke them. The arguments continued, growing in intensity and bitterness with each passing day. The words, once so careful and gentle, were now weapons. One evening, after a long and painful argument about a past-due electricity bill, Apata looked at his wife, his mind clouded by frustration and shame. He saw her face, twisted in anger, and the words just slipped out. You are acting insane, he said, his voice cold and cutting. Like a mad person. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stood still, her body rigid, her mind reeling. He had called her mad. The shame, the pain, the anger from his past abuse came flooding back. She recalled the cruel words and the public humiliation she endured for 6 months. The laughter of the neighbors, the pity in their eyes. It all came back in a single, painful wave, washing away the years of healing. What would be the one word that could break you? What would you do if someone used your past against you, a past you fought so hard to overcome? Tell us what you think. Those words were more than an insult. They were a cruel reminder of the public shame she had endured for 6 long months. What would you do if someone used your past against you, a past you fought so hard to overcome? Would you forgive, or would you find a way to get even? Let me know in the comments. The vengeful plan. The words hit her like a physical blow, silencing the air between them. She stood still, her body rigid, her mind reeling. He had called her mad. The shame, the pain, the anger from his past abuse came flooding back. She recalled the cruel words and the public humiliation she endured for 6 months. She saw herself standing in the doorway, watching him sleep in the mud, the neighbors' whispers like tiny, sharp stones thrown at her. The laughter, the pity in their eyes. It all came back in a single, painful wave, washing away the years of healing. Her heart pounded, filled with a vengeful fire. She had endured his shame. Now, he would endure hers. Her mind raced back to that time, to the public mockery she had to endure. She remembered the empty, defeated look on his face as he lay in the mud. She knew, in that moment, what she had to do. Not to help, but to hurt. She wanted to hurt him as he had hurt her, to expose his shame to the world. Out of a profound, raw frustration, she went to their bedroom. She did not pack clothes. She did not pack a bag. She grabbed their mattress and her pillow, and with a surprising, almost maniacal strength, she began to drag them toward the front door. Apata, watching her, was stunned. He tried to stop her, to reason with her, but she was a woman on a mission, her eyes burning with a single, consuming purpose. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "You will see. The public spectacle." She walked right out of the house, lugging the mattress with all her strength, and headed directly for the market. She did not stop to talk to anyone. She did not look at anyone. Her neighbors watched, their faces filled with shock and confusion, as she dragged the familiar mattress down the dirt path. They shouted her name, but she was deaf to their pleas. Her only destination was the very center of the bustling marketplace, the heart of their community. The market, alive with the shouts of traders and the haggling of customers, fell into a stunned silence as she arrived. With a powerful, final act of defiance, she laid the mattress and pillow down on the ground. She sat on the mattress, her face a blank mask, her eyes staring into the distance. She looked as though she was at home, ready for a peaceful nap, in the middle of 100 curious eyes. People stopped, stunned. A crowd began to form. They tried to talk to her, to help her, but she ignored them. She simply sat there, a silent statue in the middle of the chaos. The market women whispered. The men shook their heads. They all came to the same conclusion: she had gone mad. But she knew what she was doing. She wanted her husband to feel the shame she had felt for 6 months. She wanted him to be publicly humiliated, to feel the mockery of the entire village. The crowd grew bigger and bigger. The people, worried and confused, began to call his name. Apata. Apata, they yelled. One of them found him at home, the children by his side, their faces filled with fear. When he heard what had happened, his blood ran cold. He grabbed his children by the hand and raced toward the market. He arrived at the market, pushing his way through the crowd, and found her sitting there, on the mattress, in the very middle of it all. His own shame, which he had long buried, came rushing back in a single, painful wave. What will happen when he sees her? How will he react? And what will the children do? What would you do in a situation like this? Put your comments below. We will stop right there. The next episode of this family's tragic story will be told soon. What happened next will make you breathless. Subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss the next episode of this family's story.